Hello, everyone. Thanks for waiting. It's nice to see you all. It is Wednesday evening, May 29th, 2014, 2024. What year is it? It is the night we're going to be talking about cults and also Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Now, the moon is in Pisces, so it's a good time to talk about cults. I just saw the Netflix movie Dancing with the Devil, and that is featuring Miranda Wilking. And it was such a sad story, and really, I think, captures the tragedy that is based around cult-like behavior, just idolatry, really. Just a quick, I'm going to look at this tomorrow night. We're going to look at Miranda Wilking's prediction. She had a growing business with her sister and then broke off when they decided to move to LA and get involved with 7M, which has been accused of being a cult. So, what I'm going to say about Miranda tomorrow involves her life, what would be happening to her, and also making a prediction on when it seems like she can break free from the situation that she may or may not be in. And then Friday at 4:30, I'm going to be joining Amber. We're going to be looking at more predictions for the royal family. Who knew that would be so popular, our Friday show? And then don't forget how to predict super wealth. We're going to be talking about Meghan Markle, Salma Hayek, and Paris Hilton on Sunday. So keep an eye out on the community tab and also Instagram, which is at Forensic Astrologer, if you want to follow me there. Now, this is Lori Vallow, and this is really, from what I understand, not a good marriage there. This man was accused of several things, and it seems as if for Lori, there were 5 marriages, and that's okay to be married a bunch of times. Sometimes you got to get it right. And it seemed like within all of those marriages, there was one that she did get right. Sometimes you have to do it a bunch of times to really figure it out. But it seemed as if she just failed when it came to keeping that marriage together. This is Lori's birth chart. I rectified it. I think she's a Leo rising. You can usually tell, the big blonde hair, lots of, looks like a lion. And the sun would be conjunct the south node, which would mean that she would be very interested in spirituality. The worship was important to her. It would give her, uh, her vitality. The sun is vitality. And the sun being in Cancer often shows somebody who can be well known because Cancer represents the public. The sun is in a T square here. This is a major problem. And it's squaring Mars in Aries in the 8th house of weapons and anger, and then opposing Pluto. So this is an intense amount of anger. Now, sometimes when this happens in charts, there can be situations that will make you angry, and rightly so. And that was the case for Lori. Her kids would accuse one of her husbands of, molestation. A really bad guy. So it seemed as if there was a problem when it came to how she would handle things emotionally. The descendant in Aquarius. Now, this can be difficult in a birth chart because it shows automatically that Uranus could be divorces. And with Jupiter representing traditionally the husband, you can see how there's a square to the moon. And so this person might be famous, might be divorced, somebody who she's very interested in, already divorced, might be known to see the future, which was very big in this case because they constantly were predicting a doomsday scenario, which I thought was interesting because they started being really interested and intense on it right before the pandemic. So it made me think that they were potentially seeing or feeling something And yet they weren't really seeing it through the right lens. They were seeing it as if everybody was just basically going to die, which a lot of people did. So that's kind of I don't think anybody really talks about that. But when you have a planet in Aquarius, and let's say it's it's got a bunch of trines, you are able to make futuristic predictions. When it's in a square, often it is being able to make predictions, but maybe that aren't exactly correct, or that the public doesn't believe you that something's coming in. So that's what the square is all about. Jupiter is so important in a woman's chart because it represents a husband, a partner. But for her, it would be two different symbols. It would be not just Jupiter, it would be Uranus. And Uranus is in Libra. Uranus is at 18 degrees, which is the devil degree, a person who would be seen potentially as the devil. And in the third house, somebody who, weird how my light went off as soon as I said the devil, but I'm gonna have to say a prayer tonight. But 18 degrees is the devil, and Uranus is like an evil shock, which happened multiple times for Lori in her life. The fifth house would also represent her family. So the fifth house cusp is in Sagittarius. And in Sagittarius, the lord of that is Jupiter in Aquarius. So this is a shock of the family, basically a block of some sort. Not being able, the moon in Taurus. Moon in Taurus is luxury, wanting money, having a thirst for it. And I think it's that interest in money and luxury that ultimately would be part of the downfall of her family because of all the insurance money that was involved that they were trying to get. Now, this is Lori Vallow's solar return chart. So many people ask me about the solar return chart because it's such a predictor. And I think I was thinking about this the other day about how amazing it is how many people get an astrology reading for the first time once they see how you can pull a solar return chart and actually see specific predictions. And I think they start that learning process, and it's really good because you can see what's coming up, what's ahead. For her, she would start her first house on her birthday, like we all do, and that would be in Cancer. So you would look to where the moon would be, and that would be the ruling planet. Well, interesting how it's conjunct part of fortune. So this would be her first month, and there would be some kind of connection there with something that had to do with money, maybe an idea. Maybe she is working in the sixth house and she's doing something that has to do with money. But the problem for her for that year, you would be able to count the houses for when she started to get involved with Chad Daybell. She would meet him. This was 2018. So you start June, and then July is here, August, September 26th to October 26th. And I believe that she met him on a podcast here. Mercury rules that house. So that is trying to speak. It doesn't look like it was that great for her, at least at that time. Maybe she felt blocked. Maybe she couldn't say what she wanted to say, but it would be the next month, future husband. And that would be Jupiter in retrograde. Now, one thing I tell people all the time, when you have Jupiter retrograde, there's a risk that you take when you start dating, when you connect with a man. He is, I'm going to say it, super flawed. So you have to look for that. And Jupiter is retrograde all the time in our charts, a bunch of years in our life. So you just have to look at that solar return. As an example, J-Lo's chart, Jupiter is in Pisces. We're talking a lot about Pisces and Neptunian things. It means somebody who appears and then disappears. This is the energy of Neptune. Now we're looking at Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio, and Scorpio in the poorest form can mean a murderer. One way you could see how bad it is it's in the middle of a T square. So you can see she's about to meet this murderer. It is in a T square right here. It's aimed at the 8th house of death. Venus is money, okay? And it has to do with her assets. He wants her assets. You can see it. And North Node normally would mean that you would gain that year as far as money and assets. Well, he was after it. He was greedy and money hungry. She probably would have just like tossed him aside, like, get out of here, buddy. But the issue in her solar return chart for 2018 would be Neptune. And this is somebody who's fake, who's idealistic, who's a false prophet. 9th house is a prophet. It's religious. And she really liked that. She just saw him in this idealistic way. Neptune retrograde, also very weak, not working correctly, a little off. And so this would be her 5th house. This would be around November where they really start to get to know each other and start getting interested in travel. It would be that next month where they're talking about travel and making plans. That's Sagittarius. She's thinking about work. She's thinking about podcasts. She's thinking about how she can warn others of what is to come. So I really do think that they had something futuristic that potentially, if they had seen it correctly, it wouldn't have gone so horribly wrong. Now, with Pluto conjunct Black Moon Lilith, this is a major caution in anybody's solar return chart. Why? Because it's Black Moon Lilith, which we know is bad, we know is shady. When it shows up in your solar return chart, you better pay attention to it, and you better pay attention to the month that it comes in too. For her, it might even be that June of her birthday, June 26 to July 26, which would be her first house. Might be just that she's planning to go on the podcast, but somehow there is this there's this aspect to Pluto. Why is this so bad? I mean, this really shows up like super obvious, and that's because Black Moon Lilith, very bad with Pluto, is deadly. Pluto is a murderer. Pluto is murder. This is a dark force that's there. Now, if you were to look in your own solar return chart and you saw something like that, you would be able to see that. What are you this year? You're the moon. You're here. You're successful. You're right next to part of fortune. You're not really aspecting this murderer in any way. So it seems as if this is all happening around her at this point, and she is not clashing with this person. And why am I looking at these two? It's because it's in the 7th house that is the profile for either a partner or a future partner. So what do we have here for her solar return chart? Well, we can look at Saturn, which is her husband, Saturn retrograde. Maybe the relationship isn't to her liking. There could be some paranoia and which he did rightly so have when he was calling everyone saying that she was going to ruin everyone's lives, but he was not at capacity. He wasn't able to help. He was weak, okay, that year. Then we've got Jupiter. This is another person coming in. This is the 5th house of lover. So this guy is a murderer, and he will murder because of this T square. It's in her 5th house of family. With this T square here, he is going to murder her family. Chad Daybell. Now, they're going to say that she was a part of it, but he would really kick this off. It would be at the fifth house. It would be around November of 2018. And interesting, it would be a Scorpio month where basically this is the year that would change her life, and she would be put behind bars, which is also Neptune. What's interesting is that there is the second house really prominent in this chart. Now, the moon represents her. So she has access. She has access to this money. Well, she was married to a guy who was pretty wealthy and very generous to her and her family. She had that money. Chad, it seemed, did not have that money. But what did he have? He had the cult. And he was a published person. He published on religion. So that was kind of his asset. But together, they were not going to be a good team by any means, because if there was any kind of money to be made, he would feel as if he would have to murder, which would be Scorpio. Now, this is the wedding chart for Chad and Tammy Daybell. And this just makes me so sad because Tammy Daybell is one of those moms. It just seemed like the perfect mom. She was very good with putting family ancestry records in databases. Interestingly enough, she would put a lot of death records in the database. And by the way, I never knew this, but the Mormons, they have an amazing um, database of records if you're looking for family history. So she was all part of that. She was an active church member, was just such a good mom from what it seems, from what you read, and a wonderful wife. She would support him while he, typical where the wife does all the supporting, does all the sacrificing, and then what happens in the end? It doesn't work out for after all that effort. Now we've got the wedding chart. So what is this? The ascendant is the groom, and the groom is Jupiter in Cancer, because there's a Jupiterian energy. Jupiter also represents the husband. Venus represents the wife, and you could tell that she's really good at the database. She's very, very good at computers, coding, and it seemed like she loved it. Now, you can also say that the moon at 29 degrees, which is the king degree, that's in the third house, and that represents the groom. So, what we're looking at here is we're looking at Jupiter. This kind of reminds me of Scott Peterson a little bit, because Lacey Peterson's uh, chart looked a little bit like this. It was her birth chart. So, Jupiter represents Chad, the moon represents Chad. She is represented by Venus, and she's also represented by Saturn, which is the seventh house lord. That's the wife. So you can see a few profiles in here. Saturn at 22 degrees in the eighth house shows, and I mean, if you were to do a chart for her when she was, in her 20s, and you saw something like this, you couldn't even imagine like how this could happen. But the eighth house is the house of murder, and at 22 degrees would be killed. Now, she was killed, it is alleged, by asphyxiation, and they pointed the finger at Chad. So let's just go over the area here that shows that he is a murderer. That is a stellium. This is a stellium in the fifth house of family in Scorpio. And what do we have here? We've got Black Moon Lilith, that shady, bad character, conjunct Pluto. Super bad, super evil. So there is a super evil murderer in this family. And we found out who it was. And who is it? But the husband right here. And we also We've got the husband. The North Node here is, so much Aquarius when it comes to the doomsday type of stuff. What are they doing? They're forecasting something and they're writing about it. Chad Dapel was writing about it. So a lot of interest in the future here. Now, the sun for this wedding chart, um, this is at 18 degrees. So that's the devil degree. And it's in the 10th house. It would show a coupling of two people who were very religious. Why? We have this sextile to Neptune showing religion, and then also a trine to Scorpio, to that stellium there. What's interesting is vertex in Scorpio is the point of the chart. Whenever you want to look at the point of the chart, and it seems as if it was Scorpio related. Now, there would be other Scorpio types of things involved in their marriage. There might have been things that have to do with work, other people's records, stuff like that, which can be kind of innocuous Scorpio things. But for the most part, you can see clues here of how it would really not be a good wedding chart. And here also is another clue. This is the bride's house. Why is the seventh house the bride's house? Because she accepted the proposal. The first house is, whoever starts the chart. So that's the groom. And moon showing. So interesting how the moon would be in Regulus, which would mean king, yet I mean, he could have really done something, I think, but it squares Neptune, and Neptune is it's a narcissist. Whenever you see a square to Neptune, oh, that's a narcissist. Somebody who could be very charming too. I I have come across a few guys who are incredibly good at acting like a normal person when they're not. And Neptune means an actor. Many times you'll see really, really good actors and they have bright blue eyes. And so it's very, very easy for them to have a disguise and to play that role. Except the problem is when you're not an actor and you're playing a role, well, it can be dangerous for others. Okay. Oh, really? Thanks for tuning in, Crafts and Crime. Yes, Alex, her brother, is the one that did the killings. It is just one thing after another, and I'm interested to see what you think when it comes to our destiny. Do you think that Lori Vallow had any free will in this? Or do you think that she was destined to be a doomsday mom? I think that we do have some free will, but I think it depends on your solar return chart. Some years we don't have the free will. Other years we do. And I think that might be the reason there is so much discussion about it, because many people say, yes, well, I had the free will, and others are like, no, there's no way I had free will back in 2016, or whenever it was. But I really strongly think that the solar return chart is going to depend on whether you can choose or not. So I think that both are right, that there are times in our life when we do have free will. So, yeah. It is so tragic about Charles Vallow. And I wanted to show you. Yeah. Okay. So let me just share this real quick. Okay, so this is when Lori Vallow was interviewed by the Chandler Police Department. And this is her brother, Alex. And this is her husband. Like, what a dynamic man, to find somebody who has resources, is generous, wants to adopt your kids, is that loving father that was missing in their lives. And in the end, she gets together with this new guy and tries to kill him for his life insurance. And I don't know if you guys saw that on YouTube, where he calls in, the life insurance company made that public. He called 3 times to make sure he knew that he was at risk to be murdered, and he saw it way ahead of time. So I won't read all of this, but it's a little bit confusing, because it's like, well, they lived in a bunch of places. They were in Kauai, they were in Arizona, but they were trying, it seems like Lori anyway, was trying to get away from Charles Vallow, the good guy, her good husband. And I think he was husband 4. And so after the shooting of Charles, Lori Vallow moves to Rexburg, Idaho with her kids. And that would be JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Within weeks, the siblings vanished before being found dead on the property of Chad Daybell, Lori's new husband. So in 2021, a grand jury in Maricopa County indicted Lori on account of conspiracy to commit murder in connection with Charles's death. And so that was really the big news at that point. Like, what is this woman doing? I think it's really interesting too, and I'll show you a comparison, but doesn't Tylee resemble, and I don't know where I'm going with this, doesn't she resemble Libby German? And what's weird is that JJ, to some degree, represents Abby Williams, the red hair, the hooded eyes. And I think, you see these types of things and you're like, okay, well, what's that theme? But if I recall, at the top of the Delphi chart was Neptune, which is cult. So I wonder if there is some kind of similarity with this case. And just because of it's just amazing how there is such a, resemblance, I think. I mean, I might be wrong. You tell me. So this is an old article, but video interviews from July 11th, 2019. And that's the time that I pulled the chart for this. They were released in October 2021 after what police initially called a domestic dispute between the arranged couple. But, Lori had her brother there, and it seems as if she was directing him exactly what to do if he showed up at the house that they were now living in. So, Alex shot Charles and claimed self-defense. Then Lori tells a bunch of lies. They go to get her mentally evaluated, and Tylee, his adopted daughter, brings out a baseball bat for protection. It's just confusing to everyone. So Lori says Alex, her brother, wrestled her husband to the ground. Charles swung the bat. And if any of you have not seen this already, definitely check out the Netflix documentary. It is riveting. Now, here is, I'll probably get a commercial.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And then I'll
initially moved, he had said he was going to buy you a house. So you moved here with your.
Yeah, he was going to rent us a house.
And so you moved.
All my family lives here. So
Right.
we lived here for a long time.
Okay.
And then he moved us to Houston.
Okay.
And we were there with my son. He was out of school. He didn't have any of his services, his DDD, his anything. He ripped him out of school and said, we're moving.
Okay.
And I didn't go with him at first. And he took him. And I let him take him. And I didn't file anything or whatever. And then he filed something against me and said, I'm only going to get supervised visits because I'm crazy and blah, 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 the story. And so I just didn't talk to him for 30 days and let him take care of him and let him see what I've been doing for the past 7 years, because men need to do that. I have 5 kids. I have grown kids. I have grandkids.
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to threaten me that you're not going to let me see my child without supervised visitation? Okay, do it for 30 days.
Okay, so she's playing the good guy in this, and I drew the chart for when she's talking. Basically, it's right after I believe he was shot. So we're going to take a look at that. That's July 11th, 2019. It's pretty interesting. Hopefully, you can see it. I'll make it a little bit bigger. I can't make any notations, but I can just show you how the ascendant is in Virgo, okay? And this is the victim. Um, Mercury is retrograde. Isn't it interesting that all this happens? I mean, how much chaos happens when somebody decides they're going to do something, which Charles Vallow did. He decides he and that's also what happens in retrograde too. Our energy is such where we start thinking of things over and over and over, and we react, and we start certain things that we cannot take back in the end. It's a mistake. It causes chaos. So yeah, lots of redhead. And yes, I was talking about Tylee was, I believe, adopted by Charles, and JJ was adopted from, yes, from Charles's brother. That's right. So that was a little bit later. I don't know if there was an adoption or not, but he basically Charles saw Tylee as his daughter. All right. So check out the 18, Neptune at 18. This is an evil cult. Hello. I mean, and it's right on the descendant here. So that is the seventh house, which represents her. It represents her, meaning Lori Vallow. The cult is basically the reason for all of this, the evil cult. And so we would look at Neptune and how powerful it is in this crime chart. Look at that big blue triangle, and that is between the Sun and North Node in Cancer, and the Sun is the 12th house, the hidden enemy, the secret. Okay, so there's a big secret here, and it's the secret of a mom, which would be Cancer. The mom's secret is an evil cult, and Moon is in Scorpio. So this is not good. And you can also see how the 5th house with Saturn in it shows the death of a family. That's the opposition. So it's basically, that's it, with Saturn, South Node, and Pluto right there. This is, this is starting of the pandemic energy. Lots of, I'm afraid to say, dead bodies. So it's just lots of despair. So this is family despair. But Neptune, which is Lori Vallow there in the 7th house, she's not really seeing it. She is squaring Jupiter retrograde, which means she wants him gone. Jupiter squaring Neptune is poof, disappeared. She wanted him gone. So, and that's what happened. He was erased from the situation. Jupiter retrograde shows that somebody is coming at you. So you can even see how Charles is there in a home, which he was in, her home. Her brother was there, and there was a big fight. So he's basically fighting the cult, and he lost. So, hey, Taurus Moon Tarot, nice to see you. I was just telling everybody that we are going to be on Friday, and lots of stuff to talk about. We're going to be talking about Queen Elizabeth's birth chart. We're going to talk about Beatrice. We're going to talk about how some of those predictions in the last show came true. It's going to be a good one. So, all right. Now we're looking at a crime chart here of when Lori Vallow's 4th husband and best husband, sweetest guy, was just, I mean, a wonderful family, just basically erased. He goes away. And that is when you want to look at a husband in a crime chart, you look at Jupiter. Jupiter represents the husband. So there in retrograde, this person is weak. He doesn't have the resources. He's not thinking correctly. Jupiter squares Neptune. He's confused. He's acting out. He might have even, you know, maybe he went to the bar, he had a drink before he went in. Not saying that he did, but Neptune can show that kind of influence, substances. And, but for the most part, I think it was just Charles battling this cult. That is a square to Pluto. So, oh, hey, Roberto, nice to see you. So, all right, so I'm going to go back to my slides real quick. Yeah. Have you guys ever had a relationship, could be friends, anybody where they were either narcissistic, maybe they were in a cult, maybe they were obsessive, maybe they had addiction issues. A lot of this is Neptunian, and Neptune is an addiction. Sometimes it's an addiction to being a narcissist. So you want everybody bowing to you and being that false prophet, because Neptune represents religion. Okay, so we were just looking at the wedding chart for Chad Daybell and Tammy Daybell. They met when I think they were in high school. Just looks like the cutest couple, religious, good people who wanted to have a family. But with Jupiter in Cancer, when you see something in Cancer, you can see that on the good side, the person is kind of very strong intuitively, might even be a psychic. But in his case, I think it means that the husband would become very, very famous. Not only that, but you have a sextile to the moon. The moon also means fame. And so you're looking at somebody who becomes a king, a very, very famous person. But, it's not always good to have that kind of fame, obviously. Now, in the wedding chart, and this is the day that they got married. I wish I put the date there. I forgot to do that. But the MC is in Pisces. So this would mean that there would be some kind of Piscean ambition when it comes to the career. And so you could see that especially with that grand trine there. So much going on with murder, family murder. Chiron is harming. This is the groom basically harms. We do not want to see Jupiter and Chiron together in a wedding chart. Okay. We don't want to see them squared. We want to see them way on the other side of the chart, because it means somebody who's going to harm, particularly when there's a lot of red lines all over the place. It looks as if you were to look at the part of fortune is in the 6th house. This is in publishing. So you could see, what would become of this couple. Well, she would support him and he would go on to be what seems to be a successful publisher for a while. Yet that evil cult here, Sun in Pisces, would not allow that to be possible. If only he wasn't so greedy. If only, then it would have worked out for this couple. This is Tylee, and then this is Abby and Libby. Abby Williams and Libby German from Delphi. So I didn't put JJ's picture up, but there is a similarity. And so I figure maybe there's a similarity to this case. Now, this is Tylee's solar return, and it is the solar return of the year that she and JJ died. And so you can see that she is the sun this year. She's in the 3rd house, and it is squaring. Look at this. We're not surprised. Now, notice how Saturn is conjunct Black Moon Lilith. This is very, very bad and very, very evil, particularly when it's in a square. And then on top of it, you have a T-square here. And the T-square is Mars. It is fighting. All right. Lots of fighting. But look at what this, hopefully you can see it. Let me double check. Yeah, you can see it. There's a square between the 5th house. Somebody's in there. Somebody's in there that's evil. Who is it? It's a father. It's an evil father figure. And it's squaring Tylee, the sun. So when you have, this is very serious, when you have your solar return rising planet, rising sign planet, and it is squaring something like this, this is doomsday Saturn, okay? Doomsday publisher, somebody who publishes and is basically stopping the family, the 5th house. This is the death of the family and the death of her. And then you can also see that this is JJ, Mercury. Mercury rules her brother, 3rd house, another square. So early on, you could see that in her birthday, I want to say, let me double check when her birthday is. Tylee Ryan birthday. Okay, September 24th. Okay, this is the chart for, no, I'm sorry. That's when she was born. September 2019. Okay, so this is the chart for the year before. September 9th. Yep. So this would be the month that she would, go missing. Let's say that. And Moon is in Scorpio there. It seems terrible for her because one thing, and Scorpio is a main theme here. But whenever I see this in solar return charts, it shows, and I see it all the time. I mean, I think sometimes it's why people call me, because they're like, what is happening? Why is everything stuck? And it's because of these nodes. The nodes, you can see, are squaring the moon. And the moon rules the month that she would go missing. So there wasn't anything that she could do. There was no place that she could go. It's so freaking sad. And another thing that's noticeable here too, we see this in my Sunday shows with the super wealth, super fame. For her, she would become super famous. The whole world, it seems, would know about her life and her name. Pluto and the moon. This is major fame. So when you see something like this, you kind of want to get to the bottom of like, okay, why am I going to be famous now? I mean, not to, make light of this, but you can definitely see everything culminating here as to she's going to be stuck. There's going to be problems. There's somebody in that 5th house. It's like some weirdo because of the black moon Lilith. He is, a Sagittarius is also very religious. So you've got a religious type of energy. And it's devastating. And then I would say that, if you've had a bunch of astrologers take a look at this, they would also note that Uranus is up at the top. So this would be a year of shock, of a complete holy shit. When you have Uranus up at the top in Aries, this is a gunshot. Even though I don't think that's how she died, but it's kind of like an outburst of anger. And there's an opposition with Jupiter. Now, this is the family, the planet that represents the family. So the family falls, and there's violence. So it's just very violent. Very sad. So one thing I wanted to show you, though, we're always talking about Black Moon Lilith, and I think I'm going to have people on in the coming weeks, check the schedule. I believe it's going to be Friday for my Black Moon Lilith show. And I'm going to have some former clients come on and, regular clients. And they're going to talk about how we saw Black Moon Lilith and how it culminated for them in that year. And there's some pretty amazing stories about that. So we've got Black Moon Lilith. Notice how in Lori's chart, her solar return chart, she has Black Moon Lilith conjunct Pluto. That is times a million bad, super bad. And then on top of it, an opposition there, which, you don't want an opposition with Black Moon Lilith. You want to stay on the right side of Black Moon Lilith. And everybody has Black Moon Lilith in their charts. It's like a warning. It's a warning. Okay, let's see. We're Lori Vallow. We're looking at this with an astrologer. And the astrologer says, one thing, before we go, I just want to take a look at Black Moon Lilith, because that's usually the house of, what I usually say, beware of. If it's in poor shape, if it's in an opposition or a bad aspect, let's take a look at where it is. Oh, it's in the 7th house of partnerships. That would give you some indicator that if somebody is interested in you that year, and by the way, you're married, you better be careful. And it can also show, I've seen this too, it can show that if, like, it's kind of it's aimed at her first house of identity. So her identity is being affected by it. She is getting that energy as well. So occasionally I will have something like that, and it's aimed at the area around the ascendant, where it can make you be the one that is looking around doing shady stuff. So, and I say that, I know that's controversial because, do we have free will? I don't think a lot of the time that we do. And I think that's one of the reasons why I tend to be sympathetic, which I shouldn't be, towards people who cause such tragedy for others, and which is what these two did. And then, of course, how interesting that in the same solar return chart, I shouldn't say the same chart, but the same energy, the same conjunction is Black Moon Lilith conjunct Pluto in the wedding chart. So, his bad energy is reflected in that wedding chart. Crazy. So I covered Charles Vallow's crime chart, and it's really strange because if you were to see this chart, you'd see a lot of Cancer. And a lot of times I say to people that that's somebody who's very, very intuitive, somebody who has psychic tendencies. So, it's a twist on this case, but I really do think that they saw something coming ahead. I think they sensed the pandemic, but it was just a twisted way of viewing it and thinking about maybe they're getting traction in the career and there's so much insurance money involved and trying to accumulate more money. And that, I think, was more Chad's strategy. That was more him than her. Let's see here. And, what's really interesting is we always see a stellium in Sagittarius when it has to do with Netflix or Hollywood, right? And so her family would, they would be the subject of a Netflix documentary. This is documentary. Filming inside the home we would see, and photos. So you definitely have to check out that documentary. Often you see North Node in your chart. It is the destiny point. A lot of astrologers will talk about that, but I've seen time and time again the North Node in Vedic astrology is the snake, the head of the snake. It bites you. And so the fifth house would be the family, and it would be the difficulty of the life. And so that's one thing you saw for her as a mom. She was moving around. She was trying to make things so interesting, how she wanted to be a good mom. She moved around a lot in the beginning there to make a better home for her family. One of the reasons she probably married Charles was to give them what they needed and wanted. And then here she goes and turns around. And I think that is a Neptunian energy that it's like a light switch. It's just crazy. So the North Node for her would be that the more that she wanted a family, the more that she created a family, the more that she thought about that, the more she got bitten. So that's the area that you're going to get bitten. You're supposed to go towards this life. In this life, you're supposed to go towards the North Node. And you do. I mean, I shouldn't say supposed to. You do. The South Node is what you leave. It's what you're born with. And it doesn't look like she was born with much. I'm not sure what her background is. Some of you probably do. But, the reason I say that is because, South Node is in a big T square here. So it's like, I mean, if you think you've got it, okay. I mean, yeah, maybe you got some intuition. Maybe you had to leave your home because South Node is to leave, and you go and receive. But what is the North Node? What's the placement of it? It's in Capricorn, which is death. So she received deaths in the family. And I really think that was her destiny. She caused it, and she went towards what the North Node was pulling her towards. Now, in Capricorn, yes, it means death, but it also means responsibilities. It means being practical. So she might have seen the good side of the North Node in Capricorn for some of her life. But I know a few people who have North Node in the fifth house, and one of them is an author. And in his book, he writes, the most challenging thing for me, and this is going to depend on whether the North Node is in good aspect or not. I mean, it's not just the North Node. If it's in a bunch of squares, it's going to be really challenging. But he says, having a family was the most challenging thing I've ever had to do in my life. And so I think that's what the North Node in the fifth house would bring someone. And so hopefully you guys can join me. I'm going to be on tomorrow night. I'm going to be on with Amber on Friday, like I mentioned. Then I'll see you on Sunday for the Super Wealth show. That's right, Mrs. Texas, exactly. She was always in the limelight. And that's a good point too. That's the Cancer in there. When you see a bunch of Cancer, it's usually someone, and obviously it's Leo. The Leo is the spotlight, but it's also the public sees you. And you could see that earlier in her life. Hairdresser would be very Leo. And yeah, I can't believe the CD verdict is so close. It's been too long for justice. I know. Like how many years? It's just you kind of hope, you take off your spirituality hat and you kind of hope that they're behind bars and they're suffering and there's some kind of justice being done. But on the other hand, you just know that this was the destiny of these people. And so Crafts and Crime, I believe that. So yes, she is a Cancer, Sun in Cancer, but she is a Leo rising. So, yeah, her husband Joe Ryan died under concerning circumstances. Yes, he had some kind of cardiac arrest, which is interesting because a lot of people with Leo, such really strong Leo placements, have back or heart problems. Yet it seems as if there might have been some kind of repercussions because the kids were accusing him of molestation. So she, I think it's highly plausible that that might have just been her first foray into really offing someone who, she didn't want in her life anymore. That's right. She was on Wheel of Fortune. Exactly. Okay. Phew. So, well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope I gave you some insight on some of the charts that you can pull. And there were a lot of charts here. I'm sure there's probably much more than that. But if you're interested in a reading, just go to Astrology with Val as me. You can schedule a personal reading. And I'm also doing classes on June 8th. And so there's a place to sign up, $29. And we're going to be looking at how to predict if a case is going to be solved. And then we're also going to be looking at some of the basics too. So hope you can join us, and great to see you. Thank you for coming on to chat and spending some time. Have a great Wednesday, and I'll see you tomorrow.